Welcome to the Care Principles video podcast. Isabel welcomes René Repko in the Care Principles video podcast. Since 2019, René has been leading the Dutch men's fashion brand State of Art. He has a proven track record in transforming, repositioning and creating relevance for brands. Not many people know that he is born and raised in the Black Belt, a very Protestant part of the Netherlands. His first visit to Antwerp was quite a shock, wasn't it, René?
Hi everyone and welcome to the Care Principles video podcast. Today I have a very special guest. Very special, why? Because we have worked together more than 20 years ago. René, welcome.
Welcome. Good to be here and to see you again, Isabel.
Oh, it's amazing to see you again. It's been such a long time that we hadn't seen each other.
We've worked quite intensively back in the days.
We worked indeed.
We'll come back there.
We'll get to that. But first, I would like to ask you a question. You came as a young child to Antwerp and you visited the Rubens house, which is an amazing house and one of my clients actually. And you were very shocked. What happened?
Oh, this is a beautiful story. It was a strange story. So I grew up in an area in the Zeeland, which is the southern western part of the Netherlands, which is kind of like very Protestant areas. We would call it Amish country. So they were like black clothes, very Protestant, Orthodox Protestant. So nudity and sexuality was like forbidden, like many other things. So and we as a family were not from that specific church, but it was the culture in the area. And once I was maybe 9 or 10, I don't know, I don't remember it, but the family, friends of us invited me to go to Antwerp. Okay, let's go to Antwerp because in that area Antwerp is not so far away from Zeeland.
It's very close by.
And then we visited the Rubens house. I didn't know, I was 10 years, who was Rubens. I did see his paintings, and his paintings, they were full of big men, but big women, full nudity. So I was really shocked because I lived in that area, Protestant, all the men, all the clothes, black, sexuality, nudity is a bad thing. And there I saw a museum with all those paintings full of nude people. And that was like a shock. I thought, whoa. And by the way, the other thing, it was old, so it was not like this is happening now. But I thought, well, already back in the days, it was
17th century.
The 17th
century, yeah.
Already back in those days, it was kind of like not normal, but that was happening. And so it didn't change me as a person, but it was like a quite shocking experience, yes.
So funny to know because I didn't know that story about you. I didn't know you came from the Black Belt. And when I met you, you were a marketer. You were working for Albert Heijn actually, and you've been working on many iconic brands. You worked for HEMA, you worked for Action, you worked Albert Heijn, obviously, Rituals. You always came across to me as a very liberal, very modern, very open person. So you've probably made quite a shift yourself from your education.
Yes, so it was very apparent that I wouldn't like to live in that area. And by the way, there's not so much work. And as many people do, when they are 18, they go to the big city. So I was 18, I lived there and I grew up in Zeeland. And then I went to the big city, which was Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam, well, I thought, well, this is very interesting. What's happening? I became the night porter of the Hilton Hotel, which was also very educating for me to see what's happening in a 5-star hotel during the night with women and criminals and all those things. I had a beautiful hospita, a very fine lady, a beautiful room. She was a Jewish person and she went through the war, which the Second World War in Amsterdam was quite heavily. So she had all those stories. So in a few years, I became to love Amsterdam, its history, the things happening. I lived close to the Stedelijk Museum, the writers, the painters, the culture, everything.
It influenced you in your profession, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about brands, René. You've worked on so many amazing brands. We worked together on Albert Heijn at the time. Brand building today is very different than it was 20 years ago. What is your view on it? Because you're now general manager, so you've also moved on in your career. We'll talk a little bit later about that. But how do you look back at brand building when you see what's happening today? What is the role of brands today, do you think?
Yeah. So when we worked on the Albert Heijn case, which was a very impressive case back in the days, things were, and let's make it a bit more black and white, more simple. You had a few competitors. Albert Heijn was the market leader. We were just like focusing on making great and relevant campaigns and ads, which was a pretty like scary game in itself. But it was like the oversight of the things which were happening were like, okay, there are many things happening, but this is a simple game or a simple match, very black and white. If we would swap to now, and you and I worked like on brands maybe let's say 30 years, I definitely like to mention that so many things are happening right now. If I would compare it back in the days, there's so many discussions on experiences, on channels, on customer behavior, on the role of social media, on sustainability. I would dare to say that the agenda of marketeers and or brand leaders is more complex, is longer, and it's happening in fast pace. And that's also a bit black and white. So it was back in the days. It was maybe more slow, maybe more oversight, maybe not so simple. And now, everything is happening with a huge momentum. So the role we as brand leaders take is more complex, and it's more like challenging, and we need to react more fast, and we have to like manage our agenda more clear, because before you know it, your agenda is much too long and you're focusing not enough. So that would be the difference going from back then to now, maybe.
Probably. And back then, it didn't seem that simple.
No.
Because of course we also had the challenges back then. But you mentioned one of the things is that because everything is so fast, you go straight into one of the care principles, which is agility. And I would like to first make a step to your personal life. You left the job at Albert Heijn to go back and study. You did an MBA. For me, back at the time, that was something I've never seen from anyone. Nobody stopped a thriving career to go back and study.
Yeah.
You were really a trendsetter on that level too. How do you look back also to that decision?
Yeah. These are difficult decisions. I've done it now like 3 or 4 times in my life. And I sometimes say to people I coach and I'm motivating, your stomach needs to be of concrete, because it's a heavy roller coaster. But I think as a person it's wise to cut loose of your anchors, because if you don't cut loose your anchors, you will be in the same stream, on the same path, on the same trajectory over and over again. And if you cut loose anchors, like you force yourself to put yourself on a crossing of roads, it's difficult. It's not easy, but it gives you, and at the end, you become a brighter person. You're going to be possibly more wise. You learn more about yourself. I've done it back when I stopped at Albert Heijn. Then I traveled and I looked around. When I stopped at HEMA, I forced myself, well, let's go first to an NGO in India. And after India, let's go to Harvard Business School and do a business MBA. And I've done it a couple of times later as well. But it's not so difficult, because, or it's not so easy, because people will think strangely about it. Why did you cut loose? Why did you stop that trajectory? Well, at the end of the day, I always say, I wasn't like the same person anymore at the end of a specific phase, maybe at the Albert Heijn or HEMA. You were not yourself anymore, René. You lost your passion. Why not change then?
Would you do it again?
Back over? Yeah, I would do it again. Yeah.
So whenever you have the feeling that you're losing your passion, that you might not be you anymore in the job, you cut your anchors again.
And I would advise that to many people. Obviously not straight away, because you can always work on that. You can have a dialogue with your team, with your colleagues, and I would presume like 9 out of 10 people will get new energy out of that. But sometimes you see people, well, hey, where's your passion? Where is your brightness in your ideas? Where's the energy? And sometimes you see people struggling with that. And I would say, well, if you have the means and if you have the possibility, of course, because it's not like granted for everybody, and it's also very difficult financially, I would advise that, yes.
Great. It's very courageous, but it's a great step. And then I guess that the financial part is also a choice, that you say, okay, I'll
Yes.
invest in that and not invest in
Yeah.
whatever other things that you normally invest to. No, nice. Today you're the general temporary or interim
Yes.
general manager of State of Art,
Yeah.
which used to be family owned business. Today it's private equity
Yeah.
investment.
Yeah.
It's a big step, I suppose, that you go from a marketing position to a general management
Yeah.
position, specifically in an organization that still has family values and is family driven.
Exactly.
How was that transformation for you personally?
Well, I've known how private equity works with portfolio companies quite intensively, because HEMA back in the days was already a private equity owned company by KKR and later Lion Capital. Obviously, Action is from a very, very successful private equity company. So I know the ups and downs and the pros and cons of how private equity works. And State of Art is owned by Quadrum Capital, which is a very fine, very positive, very rewarding team for us. For me as a leader, it's more difficult, because obviously there are numerous domains also leading to my responsibility. But it all depends on the team. And the team in Lichtenvoorde, where we're based in the eastern part of the Netherlands, is a strong team. We have a very fine team on design, on buying and merchandising, on finance, on logistics and retail. Here in Belgium, we have a fantastic retail leader. So I'm managing the business not from the idea that I need to be able and to be capable of owning all those subjects in itself. Why should I? When we have perfect people, perfect teams which are designing merchandise, why should I when I have a fantastic team on finance? So it's more like overseeing, giving people feedback. The broader strategy part, obviously, I own intensively. Also the discussions and the dialogue with Quadrum Capital and other shareholders, and then giving people empowerment to be and become very successful. That's possibly the most important part of my role.
Mm-hmm. State of Art is it's a men's fashion brand, retail brand. Fashion is not the most caring and sustainable industry in general. How do you deal with that?
Well, that's difficult. We were very, very successful up until 2019. We were on that specific part up until that day and age not so very sustainable as total industry is that not so much. And in the past 1.5 years, we've developed some specific programs to become more sustainable. We are not yet on par, but if I see what has happened within the company, like in the past 1.5 years, I think the company can be really, really proud. We've entered into a collaboration with GOTS Organic Cotton, so not all SKUs and items, but a significant part of our merchandise is now already with GOTS Organic Cotton produced. We've started a collaboration with the Dutch NGO, which is called Loop Alive, and we source from them threads which are reused, remade from old clothing. They are pre-produced and then become new threads, and with the new threads we produce new merchandise. Mm-hmm. So reuse old material into new fashion items or basics. We will start shortly with a collaboration with Tax Tracer. It's an app, and when you scan a QR code on an item, you can see where the cotton is harvested, where it was dyed, where it is produced, how did it came from A to B to C. So, which will make some parts of our supply chain much more transparent. We've put electricity on warehouses. So in 1.5 years, we've done a lot, and it's not nearly enough. So we need to go forward and fasten up that change. On the one hand. On the other hand, there are quite complex systemic issues in the complete fashion industry. We'll maybe talk about it later, and we cannot change that on our own.
No, that's true. Let's see if we get to that, because I think we can talk for hours. But one of the things that I'm curious about, State of Art has a slightly older target group. How is the demand on sustainability from your target group, from your consumers? Is it already there, or is it something that you mainly do to get at par with the rest of the industry, or is it something that you already feel is coming from the client side?
I'm convinced it will start, or it's maybe less so compared maybe with other segments. I have no data on that, but it could be that we serve a customer segment with a mentality, let's say, from 35 years old, a mentality from 35 years old to 55 years old. Man, it could be that the ambition on being and acting from a sustainable perspective is lower in that segment. Not sure that, but that's not the case. I think the case is we are convinced that we need to change, because that's the discussion every company now has. So maybe our core customer is not demanding that or asking that. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. That's not the case. That's not the discussion. The discussion should be, or your position should be, we are convinced that we should make a difference. And if we look around on what's happening, like every other company is doing probably, on what's happening on the planet, in the teams, with the world, well, let's try to make a difference ourselves. So that's why we started these several programs.
Mm-hmm. I totally understand. We are here today to talk a little bit about the CARE principles and see, I've sent you my book, so I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on that. The generic insight behind the CARE principles is that brands have a responsibility and an opportunity to better take care of people or the planet. Let's talk a bit about the part about taking care of people, because it starts internally. First, taking better care of your own staff. How do you do that at State of Art? Do you do that now that you're in general management?
We're working on 2 or 3 different angles and routes. The first route is, which you already mentioned quite shortly, we're changing from a family-owned business to a business which is owned by a private equity company, and from a culture which you could summarize much more like a local hero to an international fashion brand. And what's very difficult for us, and we need lots of dialogue within teams, within the organization, is that you need to remain and hold to specific family values, which had the companies back in the days already. So you shouldn't let
your
loose
DNA.
Your DNA. You shouldn't let loose of all those DNA, all those family values. At the one hand, at the other hand, we need to change, because there's a lot of things are happening outside. So, and by the way, the pandemic didn't help so much in that, because before you knew it, in the pandemic, everybody was working at home. From the laptops, so dialogue and interaction and human interaction was less so, and we are very grateful we could interact again in the office, etc. That's one thing. The other thing is, which we were clearly convinced when we made a snapshot of the teams in the organizations and store, we said to each other, we need to be a more inclusive company. So if you gender-wise, age-wise, maybe ethnicity, we would say, it needs to be more inclusive, because we were a bit more like men from a specific age group, and we said, that's not. I'm very convinced that more inclusive teams are more, productive, are more energetic. More innovation will come out of more inclusive teams than less inclusive teams. So these are actually the two angles: dialogue, keep track of your family values, but change in a fast pace and innovate at the one hand, which is quite difficult, and then we hire new people from a more inclusive perspective. These are the two things which are happening right now.
Great. Let's go into the collaboration because, as you know, within the word care, there's 4 shifts in the way to do business: collaboration, agility, reliability, and empathy. Collaborations, collections, clothes are made with a lot of different stakeholders. Is there anything specific that you do to take better care or to better collaborate with all these stakeholders? Because it used to be very much like we are the brand and you are the supplier, or we are the brand and you are the shopkeeper. How do you see that level?
My reaction would be, if I would make a scan of the partners we work with because of the family-owned business, I would say that 90% of the partners we work with have been our partners for the last maybe 20, 30 years. So we as a company, where other companies would make a scan and do a request for proposal, a request for internet for a new pricing, and change partners because we can get a better deal tomorrow. In the network, in the collaboration with partners, we're steady. We find it very, very important that we could trust each other. So, and that we are, I think, very, very different. So if I could mention like sources in Turkey, which we work with possibly already for 20, 30, maybe 40 years. So that's very important for us. Yeah.
Great.
Collaborate. If we trust one another, and if we say to one another, I think you could like earn a good salary in your company, and we as well, then it's okay.
One of the things that I wonder, almost everybody today, any company, any sector has supply chain issues. You produce a lot in Europe and in Turkey. How are you handling with that?
Well, we have delays now. Like I think they're on average 2 weeks. And obviously we source partly also in Asia. So we are like everybody struggling with huge price increases of container shipping. But up until now, it's pretty okay. So I hear yesterday we were in a huge retail convention, and some other brands really, if you source like 100% from Asia, you will have some issues. But until now, no, I think it's okay. Until now, it's not too many issues, and there was some discussion also, by the way, yesterday in the retail session. That obviously everybody wants to like source maybe more local, but the production like volumes are gone. So Europe is not a production, maybe except in fashion, Portugal, Spain, Turkey. There are some areas, but not that's in fashion. But if you're in hard goods, it's gone. So we could like have a discussion. It's not good to source it in Asia. We see the disadvantages. We see the supply chain costs. We don't know so much what's happening in China or whatever. But then I would say in a dialogue or in a discussion, I would say, that's true. But we cannot source it anymore here because it's gone. The production is gone.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to dive into China just in a second, but before I dive into China, you were yesterday at a retail seminar, the Dutch retail seminar. Retail has also completely changed.
Yeah.
Half of the high streets are empty. How do you see the future of retail?
Oh, I see it very, very bright. It's only like that. Change is so quick, but I'm not so very pessimistic. I always say, Isabel, mediocrity will die. So mediocre retailers, mediocre brands, yes, they will die. But like that's like how Darwin has like developed his theories. If you can't like become a strong brand, innovate enough, be very relevant from day to day, you will die. And your shop or your format will die. But if I look at retail, what's happening in cities, new retailers are coming up. Obviously, there's a lot of flash delivery, and maybe also here in Antwerp, but back in Amsterdam, it's all about flash delivery and Flink and Gorillas. I was the hype yesterday as well in the discussion. So things are changing, which is good. And for old school, narrow-minded, mediocre formats, there's no life anymore.
And how do you see, because clicks and bricks, we've been talking about that for a long time. There's less, for instance, flagship stores in cities, but more on experience. How do you see the future of the bricks? Because you have a lot of shops.
We have like 40, 45 stores in Belgium and Netherlands. We have a lot of wholesale doors and maybe 500 wholesale doors in the Netherlands and Belgium. We do like e-com in Europe. We do Zalando marketplaces, and that omni-channel scheme or omni-channel like agenda for us works perfectly well. So we will always have like geographic independency. Maybe Belgium at this day and age or this like year-to-date moment is stronger than the Netherlands, but then I have Belgium and then Netherlands is a bit more weaker, but there's always a sort of cushion geographically. There's always a sort of cushion channel-wise, because maybe wholesale is stronger than our own retail, but there's a cushion. I'm not depending on one geography or one channel, which is good for us. And this specific template, this specific structure for state of art works perfectly well. We were a wholesale company from day one, like 35 years ago. We were a wholesale company. The leaders maybe like 20 years ago said, well, wholesale, and it's still happening, is decreasing as a share because a lot of moms and pop stores, fashion stores, they will die out. But then we started owned retail, owned physical retail, which is good for us. We have a place in the Netherlands, I'm not sure you know the place, Zutphen. It's a small place, maybe 25,000 inhabitants. We have a store there. It's a normal street. It's perfect. It's perfect. Obviously, Amsterdam, also Antwerp, is less good at this moment because we miss international tourism. That's okay, because we have other stores which cushion the disadvantage or the decrease of those like cosmopolitan cities like Amsterdam and Antwerp. So we have strong owned retail, we have good wholesalers, because wholesale is still happening in the Netherlands, but also in Belgium. We have specific wholesale department stores, fashion department stores, independently owned, which do really, really strong. Our e-com business is growing as a share. We started back in a few years.
How much in big numbers?
So when I started, the e-com business was still small because the owner back in the days, like many people, didn't believe e-com would happen. So we started a bit late. When I started, it was like a share of around 5%. Now we are above 15%. So it's increasing. And it's not nearly enough, but we're making pace also in the e-com channel. And then something like 6 or 9 months ago, we started with marketplaces Zalando, which is a more difficult area for us because we are new to the marketplaces. The business case of marketplace is still a very difficult business case, not just for us, but for everybody. But
did your wholesalers complain about that?
No. Well, it was quite okay because they're good wholesale dealers. They know their customers. They have a position on the street in a city, and they also know that Zalando, Bol, Amazon, it's happening. So yeah, obviously there is sometimes discussion, but up until now that's okay. So I'm yes, specific cities maybe also depending, Isabel, on the behavior of the municipality of a city. If they're like bright people, the municipality teams of like, let's say Antwerp, if they're bright and they see new concepts and they invite new concepts to start on the city streets. Sometimes it's food service, sometimes it's a place for elderly people, sometimes it's a new retail brand. I'm very optimistic about retail and physical retail in streets.
Mm-hmm.
in shopping streets.
What was the biggest learnings or the biggest insights you received yesterday after the seminar? Because all the big guys were there.
Oh, everybody was there. So we've seen yesterday. We've seen the Dutch leadership in retail. Well, to be very, very honest, Isabel, I think I've never seen, and I'm 61. I've never seen a day on which sustainability, care for your teams, vision on thoughts on how to move forward this specific retail format or brand has been such a big part of the day. So normally, if you and I went probably also to that same like events like 10 years ago, we would have like leaders who say, well, I'll fix this yesterday, I'm going to fix that tomorrow, and maybe in 1 year I'll do that. And now it was a lot more vision. So the leader of Albert Heijn, Marit van Egmond, was there. She had a speech, I think 40 minutes only about vision, their role, Albert Heijn's role in society, what it should be, why it's important that they own and have a specific responsibility. And again, if we would have like the same event 10 years ago, nobody would talk like that. So that makes me very optimistic. Not like happy that we are there, but we see leaders, also the leaders from Action, Sander van der Laan, other leaders, they feel and they speak out that they have a specific responsibility. And that's great.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And the Dutch retail market, or the Dutch market in general, the Dutch brands are in generally a bit ahead of the Belgian ones. So let's hope that
that could be
come to Belgium as well. But of course, both of us, we are true believers that things have to change. And brands have to take their responsibility, and they have to take up societal and social responsibility. So we are definitely, we can only cheer about this. I would like to look a bit further, and in the old days when people would look at retail, we would always go to the States, right? We would do these trend trips in the US and go and look there at food markets or whatever that was happening there. Since a couple of years, we've been looking a lot at China, and you have been, before the pandemic, you've made some visits to the Chinese market, and you visited a chance to go behind the scenes at some of the Chinese brands. What are your biggest insights that you've learned there?
Yeah, well, it starts with I'm a true believer of the importance of innovation. So yes, we should hold on to our values. Yes, we should focus on our core principles of the format or the brand. But innovation, would it be a merchandising innovation perspective, or channel innovation, or a customer experience innovation, or a digital innovation? Innovation is key. That's like one of my main beliefs. And yes, when we say, well, we need to innovate, we could look into the books and we could like deep dive online, on blogs, what's happening. But yeah, we went to London and Paris and New York and talked to the people in Palo Alto, to the Facebook teams and to the Google teams. What are you doing? Very interesting. And then a good friend of mine, she said, well, why don't you come along to China? And I think it was like 2018, so it's now 3 years ago. 2008. Why China? You should know, René, that on retail innovation, and specifically also physical retail innovation, but also the integration of off and online in stores, it's huge what's happening there. And we did 2 travels, so I'm not like the best or most like professional thinker about China, but we've done two trips. So Wuhan, well, obviously before the pandemic, and Chengdu, we did Shanghai, and we did Hangzhou, and we've seen amazing formats, and it made me humble. Also, like, okay, we think Europeans are like wise people. We think we Europeans on food retail or non-food retail or in fashion retail, we do a big job, or maybe US brands, New York, Manhattan, fancy stuff happening. What's happening over there was like really, really innovating. So obviously the famous Alibaba format, retail format, which is called HEMA. HEMA, if you read it, you think, well, this is HEMA, like Dutch HEMA, but we all know it's a different brand. HEMA, so cashless retail, cashless bookstores, food delivery, Didi, the WeChat app, all those things which are happening. Well, we said and I specifically myself, you should go on a travel back to China and to see what's happening there, and maybe not just to copy it, because that's not possible. You can't copy it because the infrastructure, the ecosystem, the role of tech, the trust consumers have in trust is completely different than what's happening here in the EU. So you can't copy it, but you can you can have some inspiration of the idea. And specific for food retail and cashless stores, you can see what's happening and how it works, and maybe you can translate that into your own strategy. And that's what I try to tell to people what you can do.
There's a lot happening in China. We just talked about it before the cameras were rolling. We'll not go into that because that's a different subject. But let's hope that one day we can go.
Go back, yeah. I certainly hope, because my idea would be, if we go now to London or New York, I would still think, also due to the pandemic, that the innovation speed is less than the one in China.
Probably.
We'll see.
Probably. We talked about taking care of the planet and the program that you have, Responsible Together, with State of the Art. I would like to go back to taking care of people, and I would like to go back to marketing, the role of marketing. For me, the role of marketing became very different. We used to build brands specifically for the outside, for consumers, like look at us, our brand image. And for me today, marketing really starts on the inside of a company. Really making of your own staff real brand ambassadors. What are your biggest insights in what brands should do to remain relevant? Because it's something that you said, you have to remain relevant, but it's easier said than done, right? What is for you the biggest takeout that brands in general should look for?
Well, we'll have a few discussions over there. Obviously, there's one discussion that's like the role of marketing. Is marketing still in the leadership team? So we've seen some issues and some companies which has decreased that role. I'm a believer that if you are a CEO and you would push this company forward, that a strong marketing team which pilots you through competition, through circumstances happening in the social environment, in the economic environment, and that you have a team which is capable and is professional in creating brand value, is very, very, very important for you as a CEO. If you would not have that team, if you would miss a team which is doing that each day, being very, I would like the word obsessive, how to strengthen a brand, not just marketing communication but advertising, no, on a much broader perspective, from the customer proposition, from a customer experience, making it into a whole 360 view and pushing that forward each and every day, and fighting for that also within companies, because sometimes there is a different perspective. If you would miss that as a leader in a company, I'm convinced that you cannot become a successful brand or a successful company. So the importance of marketing is, for me, number one. You need to have a team which pushes that forward. And obviously, as you just slightly mentioned, the agenda has changed. Back in our days, it was maybe, 60% or 70% was marketing, communication and advertising. It's not so anymore. So you should have a team able and capable of driving a broader agenda, but that's okay. So the agenda is wider and broader. You would have to more inclusive teams, because in different segments of the customer population, different things are happening. You should have people very, very agile and able to translate things from a digital and a social perspective. So the professionalism is completely changed. The agenda is longer and more complex. But it's crucial and vital at the end of the day to push a brand forward. And if we would skip the marketeers as the prime guardians of that idea, if we would delete them, let's say, who would be in the team to create brand value then. So it's not the buyer, to be very honest. It's not the operator of a physical retail store, to be very honest, although he or she is very important, the buyer as well. But they're not able to create brand value from a professional angle, and the marketeer should
Should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Marketing today became a lot about data. It's it became a very data-driven business, and very often I have the idea that the human is lost within the data. I don't know if you have the same.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's like, it's as if you and I would be computers, and here's the data, and these we could have like algorithms running, and then we have a solution. It's not going to work like that. So it's maybe a bit too simplistic, but I would say, well, you should be very aware of the data. Yes, we have lots of KPIs on merchandise, on channel performance, digital data, supply chain data, but you'd still need a lot of common sense to like create insights from that data, because an algorithm wouldn't do that. And my perspective also on that specific idea is, listen to podcasts, go outside, go to people, go to your customers, go to a store. That's not data driven. But if 50% or 30% of your time is focused towards that area, talk with customers, talk with colleagues, go to London, go to New York, go to Hangzhou, see shops. It's not data, but it's insights, it's ideas, it's energy. And if you can like translate or can collude or can combine that with the data, what you see happening in the data sets, you will become a brighter people, brighter man or woman.
But I totally agree with you, but I see reality within companies, and people just spend time within the company in meetings. They don't have time. They hardly even have time to go outside and grab a sandwich at it.
Yeah.
And they certainly don't get the budgets to go on a trend trip or a retail trip to whatever city, even in Belgium, come to Antwerp and then see Antwerp, or go to Amsterdam, which is still relatively cheap. So how you now as a managing director, how do you facilitate that?
Yeah. So the meetings, the meeting culture can become a monster. So why block meetings of 2 hours, 3 hours? Nobody should. I think persons, and we've just come out of cages. How do you say that? Like from the Neanderthal, we're just 2,000 years becoming like the people we know in this culture and this age. So set people on a desk and have meetings for 3-4 hours. It's not human. So I've learned from Raymond Kloosterman for Rituals, let's do meeting rooms. You probably will already experience that. Let's do meeting rooms without chairs. Let's do meeting rooms without chairs. They have a huge advantage. People are not going to sit because there are no chairs, and the meeting will be shorter. But it's very good. Short team calls. It's okay, but I'm not having like the best solutions on that. But I'm convinced that if you do like meeting after meeting, and you do this day in, day out, it sucks. It's bad.
Mm-hmm. And do you proactively ask your people to go outside and?
Yes, but obviously there's a difference to have like the idea and philosophy and also do it. Because there's all in retail, as you know, in retail there's always an issue, there's always a spec, there's always a thing happening which is like the thing of the day. That's retail. So we're not, as a state of art, we're not perfect there. We could still like improve, but when I look at the culture and how we work together and how we interact, and I can like compare it with November 19 with now September 21, we've made a huge change. We've become a more inclusive, a more agile, a more interactive culture than back then. I'm sure.
Are you going to continue there?
No. I had the objective with the private equity ownership to change structure of the company, to develop channels, to create some other differences and renew basis on which we could build again. And right now I'm finishing off the last 3-4 months, and then new leadership team will be in place, and they can build on the fundamentals we've as a team have produced, and then grow the company from there on. So then my mission is completed.
So more or less by the end of the year, your mission is complete?
Yes.
You already know, and you already want to tell what's next?
No. What I normally do is not. I don't have anything in my head. The normal thing for people would do, and there we started the discussion, is to energize yourself. I call this thought leadership. So maybe I'll do it in Amsterdam, maybe in Europe, or maybe in the US. Maybe the US already open, maybe China is still closed. Thought leadership. So think about a few things, read, try to create solution on complex retail issues, and then maybe write about it. And maybe it's very possible also that somebody will say, hey, I have this like retail brand or a retail operation. I need change. Could you help me with that? We'll see what's happening.
Okay. You should definitely write a book.
Yes, my wife is saying that always. You have written a book, so maybe I'll do the same. We'll see how circulation goes.
Exactly. Okay, last question, because we are running out of time. I'm asking that to all of my guests in this podcast. What ultimate tips, tricks, insights can you give to the people who are listening, people who might be also brand leaders, or simply people who are listening or watching this? What can anybody install? What can anybody do? What can anybody steal from your ideas and your thoughts that you say, frankly, you don't have to be in fashion or you don't have to be in retail to do this?
I would answer with curiosity. So curiosity is my main driver. So start with the idea that you don't understand it, that it's more complex, that it's like not so simple as you think it is. Any subject which is on your table, be very, very curious about what's happening in your own agenda, in your own team, in your own format or retail brand, but be also very, very curious on what's happening in social fabrics in societies, what's happening in economic fabrics in the world. So curious, and even political, social, economic, and political fabrics. If you as a marketeer or you as a economic leader has that curiosity and try to read and try to understand, I'm convinced that you will take this into your decision making, and it makes better decisions. That would be my answer.
It's a very nice one, and it really fits in with the empathy from care, because I think in order to be curious, you have to be empathic, because you have to be able to look at things and look at people and wonder why they say that or why they act like that or what is happening.
Yes, and also be very honest about that you could say, I don't understand it. A leader does not always have to say, I'm a leader, I understand it. No, not at all. I don't understand it. I'm not capable of solving this issue. But I'm curious to solve the issue with my team, look outside what's happening.
Vulnerability, authenticity.
Exactly. I'm convinced if you don't show vulnerability as a leader, you can't be a strong leader.
Which is a very different role model than a lot of leaders show.
We'll see maybe back in, or maybe going forward in 5 or 10 years, but I'm convinced that will change.
Yeah, me too. I think so too. Thank you so much, René.
Thank you, Isabel, for inviting me. Yeah.
I'm so happy.
We have great memories.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for the people who were watching this or listening to the Care Principles video podcast. Please leave me a review. Please become, how do you say that? Not a member, but...
Subscribe?
Subscribe, exactly. I couldn't even find the word. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and follow me on the Care Principles podcast. Thank you so much. Bye-bye and take care.
Do you also want to grow your brand in a caring and sustainable way? Check out thecareprinciples.com and see how we can help you.